Welcome to the Heal Your Hunger Show, where we get to the heart of why you overeat and how to stop. If you struggle with food and weight like I did, welcome home. Okay, welcome everybody to the Heal Your Hunger Show. So happy to have you here. It is a great day to be alive, and we want to stay alive, which is why I have this awesome guest here today, Dr. Joseph Mercola. And before I introduce him, I just want to say that we are indeed recording this live in the Secret Sauce to End Emotional Eating group. So if you're listening to this on iTunes, make sure you get into that group on Facebook. Just type in Secret Sauce to End Emotional Eating and join us there, because that's where you get it hot off the press, because we do record live often in the group. And I also have other announcements and other things that I offer there for free. So join us there. And if you're here at the Heal Your Hunger Show for the first time, welcome. This is where we talk about all things having to do with emotional eating and stress and really overcoming health issues by dealing with the underlying causes. And so really that's why I'm here. I was 50 pounds overweight and all about underlying causes. So diets didn't work for me. What I really needed to do is deal with why I was emotionally eating. And if that is something you feel like you do, please make sure to go to healyourhunger.com and take my quiz, the emotional eating quiz. Find out where you are on the spectrum of emotional eating, because I think we all tend to emotionally eat, but some people take it as far as being food addicts. Find out if you're a food addict or where you are on the spectrum of emotional eating, and then you'll know how better to get help. So, which of course I offer as well. But I'm really excited to introduce you to my amazing guest today, Dr. Joseph Mercola, who's the founder of Mercola.com. And he gives us absolutely the best researched, up-to-date, cutting-edge information about health. And it's such an honor and privilege to have him here again for the second time. Welcome, Dr. Mercola. So happy to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me, Trish. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's so good. It's always good to see you, always good to hear you. And thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I know everybody who's listening's hearts, thank you for all the amazing work you do to help us be healthy and not get trapped by bogus information about health. And so you've put out like a jillion books. You said one a year. Is that right?
Well, I think I put out about 16 or so. Been a run the last few years. For the last 3 years, I put out one every year. So
that is absolutely amazing. And what drives you?
Well, the mission is to help people understand that there are simple things that they can do to avoid embracing the conventional healthcare system, which will kill them prematurely. There's such simple strategies that you can implement that would radically change your health and limit you from engaging in the conventional medical system, which is designed to increase their profits and not necessarily your health. I mean, that's really the bottom of it. As a conventionally trained physician and treating tens of thousands of patients over decades, I've come to understand that at a very deep level. So it's pretty obvious to many of us who are in this field that that's the issue. So, we have, interestingly, just read a study today, or an article, or projection, that in the next few years, we're looking at 50% of the population being obese, not overweight, obese. Right now it's 40%. Just not too long ago, it was 30%. It's crazy because very few people understand the foundational basics, which are relatively simple. They're not that hard. And you obviously were successful in implementing your own personal transformation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you again for all the great work that you've done and books that you've written. And you have a new book out that we're going to talk about today. Can you hold that up and show us?
Called EMF'D.
EMF'D. There you go. EMF.
5G is coming.
F'd by EMFs, right?
That's right. We certainly have been and will continue to be. So you can do everything right. You can eat the best food. You can get the best food timing, take the best supplements, exercise, drink the clean water, avoid toxic chemicals. But if you ignore the EMF in your life, you are going to suffer premature damage and degenerative diseases, which is avoidable. We didn't have these exposures not too long ago. Actually, even this century has started to increase exponentially. But if you look over 100 years ago, back to, whoops, sorry about that. Let me just exit this application because that was my landline, believe it or not. It is not. It is not I'm going to just exit out. Exit. Okay, so that should shut that down. Okay, so yeah, because that's one of the solutions in the book that I have. And actually, I'll say it again at the end, but this new book comes out in February, and the most important part of the book is to provide you with simple, practical recommendations on how to limit your exposure. And that is chapter 7. In chapter 7, I'm essentially giving away for free. So all you have to do is go to emf.mercola.com and you'll get that at no problem.
Great. And we'll put that in the show notes as well. So say that again.
emf.mercola.com. So 100 years ago, which isn't that long, 1920. That's, right around the end of World War I, prior to the Depression. We had exposures, a certain baseline level, and now those exposures have increased. Literally, you would think a few thousand, maybe a million. No, it's even a billion. No, it's a billion. It's 10 to the 15th. And that was projections from 2 years ago. It's probably 10 to the 20th now. So it's not rocket science to speculate that exposures to these frequencies at levels that we have now compared to the past might have some biological consequences, and they do. So you might wonder, well, why aren't we being warned about this? Why isn't the government saying anything? Why aren't public health officials alarmed like they were with smoking? And I do view cell phones as the cigarettes of the 21st century. And the reason we're not being warned is that there are many similarities between cell phones and cigarettes. But unlike the tobacco industry, which wasn't really good at co-opting the federal regulatory agencies, the wireless industry has been is incredibly effective at doing this. So they have essentially captured the FCC and the CDC and all the public health agencies that are responsible for warning us about these dangers. Though they're very effective at essentially lobbying and investing in certain individuals so that they can essentially prevent them from giving the public about these warnings. So that is a major reason why you don't know about it. But even with tobacco, we had the Surgeon General and the CDC and the EPA warning people about smoking, but they still had to go on for 30, 40 years before, obviously we still have it available today, but at least people know they can make a choice. Right now, there's virtually no one who believes their cell phones are causing damage. And the other difference between the two, smoking is fraught with its own problems. It doesn't smell good, and it's offensive to many people, and it's addictive. But wireless radiation is invisible. It does, and there's incredible and enormous convenience. So it's this negative incentive to want to believe that it's harmful because it's so convenient to us. Who doesn't enjoy their smartphone and the ability to be online and communicate and text and have instant access to all these great apps? Well, there's a downside to it, and it's really important to understand what that downside is. And it's biological harm and damage, even though it's not, the authorities don't say it, but there's really not, in many ways, much difference between X-rays, which are ionizing radiation, and your cell phone. They cause almost identical damage to your DNA.
Okay, so I want you to, for people who don't know what EMF stands for, let's talk about that and then what damage we're talking about.
Yeah, EMFs is short for electromagnetic frequencies. And it's a wide range of frequencies that can go down from 0 hertz up to many billions of hertz. And not all EMFs are bad. Some are really biologically necessary and useful. And a good example of that would be sunshine. And I firmly believe, unlike many physicians, that regular exposure in healthy amounts, not excessive, of course, to sunshine is really one of the keys to staying healthy. So that, but there are some dangers in there too, because with even in regular sunshine, you have ultraviolet rays, which can cause sunburn, which can increase your risk for cancer. We don't recommend excessive exposure to these. But in that actually, so, but a certain minimum exposure or baseline exposure will improve your health. And actually that fact provides me with some hope. I guess it's hope because there's really no studies that have been done on it, that there may be a hormetic benefit to EMFs. Now, hormesis is a process that was kind of best represented by Nietzsche a number of years ago, maybe centuries ago, I think, when he said it, when he said that whatever doesn't kill you is going to make you stronger. So that's hormesis. And if you can essentially limit your exposure to these dangerous EMFs, which would be your cell phone and your Wi-Fi primarily. Others, of course, are magnetic fields or electric fields. But if you can minimize that for most of the time, especially when you're sleeping, then when you're going into the public, when you essentially are engaging in an environment that it's very difficult, if not close to impossible, to have these exposures because it's just pervasive. And to give you an example of the pervasiveness of it, we have SpaceX, which I'm sure most people have heard of. That's Elon Musk's company, private space company. They have permission to launch 42,000 satellites into low Earth orbit to provide internet, 5G internet, which is happening. They've already launched 120 satellites, and 60 are starting to work now. And by next year, it'll start to be deployed. But it's going to be across the entire world. And it just doesn't affect us. It affects insects, trees, plants of all kinds, birds.
I did not know the 5G movement was an Elon Musk driven one.
No, it's not. He's not driving it. The wireless industry is driving it, and it's certainly separate from Musk. I have a great and enormous respect for Elon, an incredible, probably one of the finest entrepreneurs of the ever born. But I don't think he understands this. So he's just doing what he believes is a good service, because he's just like many other people, is unaware of this danger. So he's providing this internet worldwide coverage. And, he'll probably be wealthier than Jeff Bezos as a result of that, because, some people speculate it's a $50 billion annual revenue stream from that. So that's a lot of money. Anyway, he's going to provide that service, but it's going to be essentially unavoidable to escape it unless you're inside and shielded in some way. And I discuss this in great detail, what 5G is, the whole historical perspective as to why we aren't aware of it, and I go in much greater detail than I just summarized here. And then also more specific analogies between tobacco and the wireless exposure, especially the strategies they're using with respect to hiring specific PR agencies and the practices of discrediting researchers who object to what the industry is saying. So they're essentially copying the playbook of the tobacco industry. And why not? It worked. It's a very effective strategy. It's essentially creating doubt in the minds of their end target. And they do it very effectively. And we're not going to, sadly, it's a giant experiment. There is no safety studies done on 5G. And the studies that have done on 2, 3, and 4G show that there is danger. I mean, the World Health Organization, even 9 years ago, acknowledged that cell phones are class 2B, which means possible carcinogen. But there was an NTP study, National Toxicology Program study, done last year, $25 million study funded by the NIH. And it showed that it was a class 1 carcinogen, even though it didn't get taken up by the World Health Organization. The IARC, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, did not review that because they just didn't. But it's still a class 1 carcinogen. I mean, it causes cancer just like other things do that are class 1. So it's something that should be your exposure to it should be minimized. And if you think about it, most of us had access to the internet prior to this century in the 1990s. And I actually was online in 1970s, which is, earlier than most. And if you think about it, though, the way we got online was not through a wireless connection. Virtually no one had wireless in the 1900s. It was through a wired connection. And there's nothing wrong with the internet. There's nothing wrong to access all this incredible resource. And it's really one of the greatest innovations in the history of mankind. But you don't have to access it wirelessly. It's safe, and it's actually a faster and more stable connection when you're on a wire. Like we're communicating now, and my connection is wired. It is not wireless. I'm not sure what yours is, but mine is wired. Okay, I can't hear
All right,
you.
mine should be and is not.
Okay, yeah. So everyone should be. And 20 years ago, everyone was, but that's not the case now. And the reason the wireless industry is pushing this 5G is because there's serious amounts of revenue that they're going to get as a result of it. Because the same services essentially could be provided in most instances through fiber optic cables, and even greater speeds and greater reliance and consistency and uptime. So that's not going to, you'll get a consistent connection. So fiber optics would be the best way to go, and it's pretty much available, and probably would be less expensive to implement, but it's not going to generate as much profit. So that's why they went with the wireless, the focus on the wireless, which and supported all the deceptive studies that suggest there's no danger, when in fact that nothing could be further from the truth.
So how will we know when 5G enters our life? What does that look like?
They'll probably, your local news media will announce it. It's in beta in many communities in the United States, and will be implemented more broadly in large urban areas in the year.
But is it mostly our cell phones that are 5G? Like, because I know we transitioned from 3G to 4G, didn't we?
Yes, we did. And that was a really good benefit, because I'm sure many people can remember back to 3G connections. It was essentially, it was close to a useless internet connection because it was so slow and the latency was so poor. So 4G has essentially solved that, unless you're in a poor reception area. And you're not going to, I mean, you'll definitely have a quicker connection on 5G, but you're not going to see a massive benefit as you did from jumping from 3 to 4G, because it'll just be more consistent. But probably some of and here's the other thing with 5G, it's not going to be widely distributed because it requires so many transmitters. It requires the 5G signal doesn't go through physical material the way 4G does, because it has a shorter wavelength. So it's less able to penetrate. And as a result, you need more transmitters. And it's expensive to install these transmitters. And they're essentially mostly going to be confined to the densely populated urban areas. So if you go out into the country and think you're going to resort back to the existing 4G system.
Okay, so
it's a long time before that.
Is 5G going to make our phones more toxic than they are now?
Well, and this is the thing. That's why it's so concerning, is because it's not just your phone, because the signals are going to be being transmitted. So you've got all the existing 4G signals, and then you're going to put 5G on top of that.
So it's just like living in a bubble of toxicity, you're saying.
Yeah, you're bathing in it, and you don't even have to participate. You don't have to have a cell phone. You're going to be blasted with this radiation.
Okay.
So there's no ifs, ands, or whys about it. You're going to be exposed, even if you don't have a cell phone. Now your exposure will be higher if you use a cell phone, but you're still going to be exposed.
So that's really what's so bad about 5G, is it's like literally a blanket of toxicity over all of us.
Yeah, coming, yeah.
And this is like, what is it like being in a perpetual X-ray scan?
In some ways, yes. Now, it is not, I want to be clear that I'm not being an alarmist, that it is clear that your cell phone and Wi-Fi's are non-ionizing radiation. They are a frequency that doesn't break covalent bonds of DNA directly like X-rays do, which are ionizing, or even ultraviolet rays are ionizing radiation. So but it does. But ultimately, most of the damage in the DNA is not done from directly breaking the covalent bond. It's from the oxidative stress that gets precipitated. So in X-ray's case, it spits off some hydroxyl free radicals in the nucleus that damage the DNA. With cell phone exposure or wireless radiation, it causes this oxidative cascade of events that essentially causes increased peroxynitrate levels that causes a carbonate-free radical, which causes DNA damage. So the mechanism is almost identical. It's just a different process and a way to get there.
Okay, now I want to remind you who you're talking to here. Like I know I've got some smarty pants listening who are like might have science degrees. I do not. I deal with emotional eating, so I need you to bring this down, like dumb it down a little bit for me, and maybe somebody else will benefit from it. But the bottom line, Dr. Mercola, is let's talk about like let's remind people, right? I mean, I've gotten this education in the past, but I need reminders as well. How bad is it to have my phone up to my ear?
Well, it's definitely concerning. You're significantly increasing your risk for brain cancer. I mean, there's no question.
And how bad is it when I have the ear? You know, those new Apple earbuds those wireless ones
that's a good question. That actually may be worse. The actual levels
not definitely worse, because to me it looks like, oh, you just got that whole thing. Like right now, I just use a phone cord in my phone.
Yeah. Well, the reason why it's likely to be worse is that at least the way most people use the AirPods, is that they're on all the time. So at least when you're on your cell phone, you're only getting the exposure to your brain when you're talking. Where the AirPods, they're on continuously. You're getting that's.
Whether they're on the phone or not, they're just.
Yeah, so cumulatively, you're probably having more exposure from the AirPods than you would from the phone.
Okay, well, let me ask you, because I like to bring into these practical terms. If I buy those AirPods, which I'm very tempted to do, but I haven't because of the EMFs. If I buy those AirPods,
smart woman.
Well, yeah, but I'm teetering. So if I buy those, but I only use them when actually on the phone, and when off the phone, I take them out of my ears and back in a little package, am I okay? I mean, relatively speaking.
Well, I wouldn't do it personally. I think it's not a good strategy.
So it's still better to use my earbuds.
It's certainly more convenient. I mean, that's the appeal of this wireless. It's so convenient, but it doesn't integrate the long-term consequence of having exposure to this. And just like smoking, if you smoke a cigarette here or two, it's probably not going to cause much damage. But if you do it for years and decades, then it's going to add up, and you'll reap the consequences of that. No one will deny, there's no denialist about the dangers of smokers, and there won't be about EMF exposures 30, 40, 50 years from now. But why do you have to wait that long and suffer the damage and the consequences and die prematurely? So it's always better to err on the side of caution, in my viewpoint.
So let's talk about what people can do. Like, I know in Europe, they're a lot more savvy to this danger, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are a lot more protests and communities and even countries that are objecting to the introduction of 5G. So. Okay,
but we're kind of sleepy over here.
No, we're not sleepy. We've essentially been hoodwinked and manipulated by the wireless industry very cleverly. They're very sophisticated. It's a $1 trillion industry. I mean, they've got enormous resources. It's not much different than pharma with respect to their ability to cleverly confuse the public and deceive them. I mean, they're every bit as big, and people don't understand that they are, but they are. They're huge. And
how do they hoodwink us? Through lobbyists?
That's one way. That's how they've captured the federal regulatory agencies, so that they're not warning us about these dangers. They do it by paying other researchers to spin off studies that suggest that there's no harm or danger. They put their efforts towards discrediting researchers who are publishing studies that show that there's a problem. And clever PR campaigns and strategies. I mean, these are time-honed strategies that work. There's no question they work. They've been using a whole variety of different other approaches aside from tobacco. Asbestos was one, and there's a number of other industries that have deployed these tactics successfully. I mean, it's behavioral science, and in many ways, it's similar to what the the biggest monopoly in the world, which is Google, and Facebook, which is following close behind them, are using these behavior science techniques to manipulate you, to get people addicted, to essentially motivate them to engage in behaviors that benefit them long term.
Well, and let's just pivot there, because I was just about to bring Google up, because I know because it's hard to believe sometimes that there are these forces at work here that aren't just, the world is not just fashioned for our highest and best good, it's for their highest and best good. So let's talk about how Google has done a job on you personally and your mission in the world.
Well, it's not just me. We've been the most visited natural health site in the world for the last 17 years now, which is a long time.
Yeah.
And we still are, even though as of 6 months ago, Google took us out of the search engine. So you can type in my name and I will come up with the first dozen or 20 links are all negative things about me written by skeptics, because they've taken all the other stuff out essentially. But if you type in a topic and my name, it'll come up. But if you just type in a keyword, where we used to rank #1 for thousands of keywords, and that's why we got so big, and it was legitimately deserved, because we had information that was we didn't scam it or game it. People linked back to it and they thought it was helpful, and that's the way it should be. It was initially Google provided a tremendous service. So they took us and hundreds of other websites out, not just us, in June. And it's really sad, because people won't have access to this information, and they're really essentially led to believe that they can essentially what is replaced is websites like WebMD and Medical News Today and Healthline, all which essentially sell ads for drugs and essentially show Google ads. So they're basically reinforcing the conventional medical model, which is killing people by the hundreds of thousands every year.
Yeah. Thanks for explaining that. That's some powerful information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's sad, but it's the reality. And fortunately, they don't own the internet. They just control it, because most people, the internet by itself is great, but you have to have a tool to access it. And Google, I think it's upwards of 80%, and maybe even closer to 95% of the people who use search engines use Google. So you don't have to. You can use alternative Google products. I would never use Chrome, or rarely ever. I mean, maybe the 1 in 100 times. But use browsers like Brave, Brave, and Brave has the option to use alternate search engines. And there's one that's from France called Quant, Qwant. So you don't have to use Google search engine. Now, occasionally you may want to, because they do have some very convenient features in there, like finding out the temperature real easily, or a phone number for a local shop, where most of the other search engines make it a little more complex. So in those rare cases when you do that, then you use Google or Chrome. But use Quant and Brave, and you can avoid most of the stuff, because they are essentially abusing your privacy. They're selling your data, and they're making money off you. And because you're not paying for the service, so if you're not paying for it, you're the product, is the bottom line. So
exactly.
And not that you have to pay for a search engine or a browser, but there is a cost to that, and it's a hidden cost that many people ignore, especially when they're using products like Facebook.
Yeah, which is your data. So let's get back to EMFs and talk about what people can do. Like, can you give us some tips on how to be safer and protect our brains and our body?
The first thing is you should, unless there's an absolute emergency, it should be the rare event where you ever are carrying your phone on your body, unless it's in airplane mode. And I would suggest you can go to Amazon, you can get these phone bags. They're really inexpensive. You can get 2 for $10. They're Faraday bags. They contain silver cloth that essentially create this cage that doesn't allow the frequencies to get out. Like last night I went to bed, and occasionally I have to use my phone. I have to text someone. It's pretty uncommon. My phone charge usually lasts for 2 weeks, because I just don't use it. It's in airplane mode all the time. But when it's on, sometimes I'll put it on and I forget to turn it off. But I put it on my nightstand for an emergency case, but it's almost always in airplane mode. Last night I forgot, but it was in the Faraday bag, so I wasn't harmed, because in case you forget, so use it as a backup, that rare time, a few times a year when you forget to turn it off, but it doesn't matter because it's in the Faraday bag, so you're not getting blasted.
Okay, so Faraday, how do you spell that?
F-A-R-A, Faraday, D-A-Y.
Okay, and that's a brand?
Yeah. and I don't know the brand, but you can it's two for $10. They're $5 bags.
Okay, so they're little bags for your phone.
Yeah, and it's a little case, and it flaps over. It has to be completely closed. It's not like a regular phone case.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely enclosed. You won't see your phone. You won't hear it. It won't work in the bag.
Okay. Wow. That's incredible. What are some other tips?
Some other tips is turn your Wi-Fi off at night. At a minimum. I mean, you're not using it. Why would you want to be exposed to it? Because your Wi-Fi is very similar to a cell phone tower. I mean, especially with the radiation levels you're being exposed to. So don't do that. And I would strongly encourage people to consider removing Wi-Fi from your home. Just don't have it, and replace it with Ethernet cables the way we did in the 20th century. And this way you can radically reduce your exposures. And when you're at home and when you're sleeping at night, you can repair and regenerate, and then you can activate this hormetic benefit so that when you are exposed to EMFs, it might actually, it increases oxidative stress, and that has a reaction to improve your antioxidant system endogenously. So you can make them yourself. You don't have to take supplements. So it can actually make you healthier. But if you're exposed, it's just like eating, right? If you eat continuously, what's happened? I mean, better than anyone.
All too well.
That is an absolute prescription for disaster.
Right.
But if you don't eat at all, you'll die. But if you eat for like a few hours, 4-6 hours a day, 8 hours maybe, and you don't eat the rest of the time, you're golden. You optimize to your right weight most of the time. I mean, obviously there's other issues in there, but frequently that is a very powerful controlling thing. So similarly, if you can disengage from EMF exposure for 16 to 18 hours a day and then go into the world and be exposed, that might be actually beneficial.
Yeah.
I want to make it clear that no studies have been done to show this, but biologically it seems to make sense.
Yeah. And obviously it's, we just have to do what we can do. And this awareness is so, so important. And I really appreciate you bringing it to us. And your book is available in February 2020 on Amazon.
It is. And if you, as I said, the most important part of the book, I mean, it really is useful if you're not convinced yet to get it and read it, so that you have a really deep understanding of why you're doing this rather than just being told to do it, because it probably is going to improve your health. But the most important part of the book is Chapter 7. We're giving that away for free, essentially, at emf.mercola.com.
And you're giving that away for free right now.
Yeah.
Great.
You don't have to buy the book to do that. But I think there's value in the book because you'll be empowered. You can encourage your loved ones and friends and families to
we all need this. Yeah, we all need this. And every kind of stress leads to stress eating. That's just the bottom line. The more stressed we are, the more we eat, if we're emotional eaters especially. So it's a very
and that compounds it, because it's a synergy. If you have this excessive stress from eating, which increases oxidative stress, and then you have it from the phone, it synergistically makes everything worse, and you're just going to get sicker quicker.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Dr. Mercola, thanks so much for being on the show. I have one parting question for you, and that is, what is your deepest hunger?
My deepest hunger is very simple. I have hunger and a passion for learning. I love to learn is my driving force. And I really want to understand things at the deepest level. So I love reading and reviewing the literature and the research and putting the pieces of the puzzle together, especially ones that people haven't clearly identified it. Because as you get older, you accumulate knowledge and hopefully wisdom, and you can take that and compile it and come up with new innovations that never existed before. It can really help a lot of people.
Beautiful. And you're doing such a good job of that. Thanks for staying healthy and staying smart and staying EMF free so you can continue to share your gifts with the world.
All right. Well,
God bless you. Thanks so much, Dr. Mercola. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Please join me on the next show for another wonderful message from Heal Your Hunger and from my special guests like Dr. Mercola. So take good care and see you on the next show. Thanks, Dr. Mercola.
All right. Well, thank you, Trish.
If you enjoyed this podcast and want to get free support, insider health info, exclusive invites to events, and more, visit healyourhunger.com.